In the heart of a bustling city square on a crisp autumn day in the early 1300s, a frail elderly man, his frame battered from endless months in dark dungeons, stands bound to a tall wooden post. His limbs ache from the chains that bite into his skin, but his gaze holds a fierce, unyielding spark that defies the agony. This is Edmund Blackwood, the revered leader of a once mighty order of warriors sworn to protect sacred paths. A massive crowd presses in, eager to see him crumble and plead for forgiveness after years of accusations and torment. But he surprises them all. With a voice steady despite the pain, he pulls back every forced admission he'd made under duress, declares his brothers in arms blameless, and hurls a solemn vow against King Henry IV and Pope Benedict IX, calling on divine justice to strike them down before the year fades. In that era, anyone branded a rebel who dared to withdraw their words faced the ultimate penalty without delay. The torches are brought forward, and the fire begins its cruel dance. It rises gradually, licking at the wood with deliberate slowness. Those who stood nearby later swore he uttered not a single cry of despair. He kept echoing his solemn words until the thick clouds of smoke choked his breath away. Pope Benedict IX passed from this world just over a month later. King Henry IV followed in less than a year. Was it mere chance? For centuries, tales have circulated in hushed tones about the lingering power of that final declaration from Edmund Blackwood's order. What follows is a deep dive into 10 of the most chilling ways people were put to death in those shadowed times, techniques crafted to stretch out the end over agonizing hours or even days. This is the essence of hidden histories, the raw truths that echo through the ages. Each week, we pull back the veil on the accounts that time tried to erase, the fates too grim for polite conversation, the torments that would make modern hearts falter. If you're someone who thinks the past should be laid bare, no matter how unsettling, make sure to follow along because the details ahead plunge even deeper into the darkness than anything you've encountered yet. Let's begin with the inferno itself. Tying someone to a post and setting it ablaze wasn't merely a way to end a life. It was a grand spectacle rooted in deep beliefs. A ceremony meant to showcase the unshakable control of spiritual authorities over every aspect of existence, from the physical form to the eternal spirit. The idea was that flames could cleanse, wiping away corruption and offering a twisted path to redemption through endurance. Yet, the reality hidden from casual retellings is stark. The religious leaders of the day had strict rules against their own drawing blood directly. It was written in their sacred codes. So, this method became a clever workaround. No sharp edges, no spilling of life force, just the purifying element doing what was deemed necessary. Picture the scene unfolding. The doomed individual is paraded through crowded avenues, draped in a garish tunic splashed with images of hellish fires and demonic figures. The onlookers, fueled by fear and fervor, pelt them with filth, spoiled produce, jagged rocks. By the time the procession halts in the open plaza, the person is already marked with bruises, cuts weeping red. They're secured to an upright beam with heavy metal links, not simple cords that might give way too soon in the heat. Bundles of timber and dry grass are piled up to about waist level. Then, the one tasked with the deed steps up and ignites it all. Now, this is where the true horror reveals itself. Those who carried out these acts weren't amateurs. They were trained professionals, part of organized groups, honing their craft over years like any artisan. They understood the nuances of fire, building intimately. A fierce, rapid blaze could bring a swifter conclusion, tightly packed, seasoned logs allowing air to flow freely, leading the unfortunate soul to breathe in scorching vapors that scorched the insides, sealing off breath in perhaps a quarter of an hour. But imagine the alternative, the one chosen for maximum torment. Damp branches that barely catch, soggy bundles producing choking fumes without much warmth, setups that trap the smoke. In this setup, the destruction creeps upward bit by bit. It starts at the base, the skin bubbling and bursting open, blackening as the layers beneath melt away like tallow. The scent that fills the air is something witnesses could never forget, a mix of seared flesh and a bitter, unnatural tang that turned stomachs and drove even the hardiest to retch. The person at the center would cry out in desperation, imploring for a sip of relief, invoking higher powers, some losing their minds amid the waves of anguish. Such a drawn-out ordeal might drag on for several hours before the end mercifully arrives. Take the story of Eliza of Brookfield, a young woman from humble roots who rose to lead forces in battle, convinced that voices from above guided her hand. At just 19, she met her fate in a market town square in 1431. Her pyre was engineered for prolongation, layers upon layers to ensure the flames teased rather than consumed. Accounts from those present recall her invoking mercy multiple times, her voice piercing the crackle, indicating she endured wakefully for a harrowing stretch. The man who tended the fire was so shaken that he confessed his fears to a confessor later that evening, whispering that he might have destroyed someone truly blessed. Decades on, her name was cleared of all stains, and centuries later, she was honored in the highest ways. But on that fateful day, as the crowd jeered, she perished in agony. Then there's Theodore Grayson, a thinker and scholar who dared to propose that the cosmos stretched endlessly, with distant lights like our own sun. In a grand city in 1600, his punishment came with an added cruelty, a cruel spike driven through his mouth to silence any final utterances. He faced the end without a word, but his concepts echoed far beyond. Across generations, countless others accused of dark arts or forbidden knowledge met similar ends, their numbers swelling into the tens of thousands. To flesh this out, envision a fictional but plausible scene from a smaller village where a local healer, accused of tampering with forbidden herbs, is led to her doom. The townsfolk gather, some with stones in hand, others murmuring prayers. As the flames begin, she speaks to a young apprentice in the crowd. "Remember the remedies I taught you, child. They heal, not harm." The executioner, a burly man with calloused hands, adjusts the wood to slow the burn, muttering to his assistant, "Make sure it drags. The bishop wants a lesson here." Hours pass, her cries fading into whimpers, the air thick with that dreadful odor, until silence falls. Such additions highlight how these acts weren't isolated, but woven into everyday life, affecting communities deeply. Another example. In a coastal town, a fisherman turned dissenter is burned after challenging church taxes. His family watches from afar, his wife whispering to their son, "Your father stands for truth. Don't forget." The fire climbs, and he shouts defiance. "This blaze can't touch what's right." The crowd shifts uneasily, some turning away as the reality sets in. But as grim as the stake was, for those charged with betraying the crown in certain lands, the response was even more visceral, ensuring the penalty echoed the perceived betrayal. The ritual known as being suspended, eviscerated, and divided was spelled out in meticulous legal terms, read aloud to the condemned as they stood trembling. It began with stripping away dignity, binding the person to a rough wooden sled pulled by beasts through uneven paths. The jolts and drags over stones ripped at bare skin, while jeers and debris flew from all sides. Arrival at the site meant more wounds, perhaps fractured bones. Then the noose, tightened just enough to hover at death's door without crossing it, a calculated strangling that left awareness intact. Cut loose, still gasping, the next phase unfolded, the removal of vital parts, shown to the victim as proof of life persisting amid horror, then consigned to flames. The belly slit wide, innards drawn forth deliberately, coiled and sizzling in view. Vital organs followed, the course saved for last. Only then the severing of the head, the body cleaved into segments, preserved and mounted as grim reminders across the realm. Duncan McAllister, a fierce fighter for his homeland's freedom, endured this in a major city in 1305. Records note he stayed alert even as his insides were handled, his mouth forming silent words, perhaps pleas or final oaths. His remains were scattered to key locations as warnings. Imagine the scene expanded as he's dragged. A loyal friend in the crowd calls out, "Duncan, your cause lives on!" The executioner, pausing with blade in hand, responds gruffly, "Quiet." During the drawing, Duncan manages a whisper, "Scotland will rise," before pain overtakes. Simon Hawke, involved in a plot with explosives in 1606, cheated the full measure by leaping to snap his own neck, a desperate act of control. Picture a dialogue there as he's led up. A guard taunts, "Ready for the show, traitor." Simon replies calmly, "My end is mine," before jumping. This punishment lingered in law books into the industrial age, a stark contrast to emerging modernity, to prolong suffering even further. Some regions employed a device that turned the body into a shattered ruin while keeping the spark of life flickering. The wheel of torment involved securing the naked form spread out on a massive wagon wheel laid flat on a raised platform for all to witness. The enforcer wielded a stout metal rod, starting at the edges, ankles crushed with resounding snaps that silenced the murmurs. Wrists next, then shins splintering under repeated strikes. Forearms, thighs, the thickest requiring extra effort, perhaps shifts among helpers. Upper limbs, then the cage of ribs, each one methodically fractured. Pauses allowed the echoes of agony to resonate, the crowd to reflect. The aim, utter demolition without hasty demise, steering clear of lethal spots. Once done, the mangled appendages were laced through the wheel's gaps, the whole hoisted skyward on a pole, left to the mercy of weather, thirst, creatures pecking at wounds. Days of immobility, awareness trapped in ruin. Elias Harper, an innocent traitor of faith in a divided land, 64 and wrongly blamed for a family tragedy, held firm through the ordeal in 1762, exonerated too late. Envision an added scene: his daughter, hidden in the throng, sobs, "Father, you're blameless." A priest nearby hisses, "Silence, heretics kin." As bones break, Elias murmurs, "Truth will outlast this." Another tale: a blacksmith accused of forgery meets the wheel. His apprentices watch, one whispering, "He taught us honor." As the bar falls, shifting to ancient revivals, the punishment of the container for kin slayers involved seclusion with beasts. Beaten, hooded, sealed in a hide bag with a hound for betrayal, a fowl for aberration, a serpent for deceit, a primate for ridicule. Tossed into waters, the chaos inside, scratches, bites, strikes amid suffocating dark. Screams pierce the seal briefly. Expand with a story: a son accused of patricide begs, "It was accident." The official replies, "The beasts will judge." Inside, panic ensues. His final thoughts of regret. Reginald the Cruel mastered the spike, selecting oiled poles for internal passage, hoisting victims to slide downward gradually. Convoys of thousands formed forests of misery, deterring invaders. Dinner amid the groans, a noble's complaint leading to his own taller fate. At a scene, a captive soldier pleads, "Mercy, Lord." Reginald laughs, "This is my mercy." Slow. Another example: a thief impaled, villagers passing, one saying, "His greed brought this." As he whispers for water, the bisecting saw, hung inverted, blade at the core descending, blood keeping senses sharp till midway. Debated but illustrated. Imagine a blasphemer cries, "Forgive me." Executioner, too late. Crowd gasps as it progresses, boiling in vats, lowered incrementally. Flesh slaving, Thomas Cook, for alleged tainting in 1531. Seen bubbles rise, he screams, "Innocent!" Onlooker, the law demands it. Skinning alive, precise peels from edges in. Leonard Fairfax. Betrayed post siege in 1571, endured hours. Add dialogue: Ottoman leader, "Your defiance ends here." Leonard, "My spirit endures." Falling from heights, sometimes survivable, lingering in pain. A famous toss in 1618 ignited conflict, survivors claiming miracles. Caging aloft, exposure claiming lives slowly, remains as warnings. All these spectacles restored order through terror, blessed yet cruel. Progress came later, but vigilance remains.